being here. I appreciate that you're taking this side of the room and not the other. So joining me, we'll start as you're sitting, is Paul Ahlstrom from Alta Ventures. I'm sure that most of you by now know Alta, and otherwise you should know Alta. It's one of probably the major funds doing things in LatAm now, and you have a great experience probably worldwide by now, so thanks for joining us. Gabriela Ruggeri, who's a managing partner for Seagrass, Seagrass Capital Partners. And as well, you got very relevant experience in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and I think you've probably seen it all by now. And Haroldo Korte from Atomico, and as well, I think you got a great sort of experience coming out of Brazil, but then across the region. So let's start by you. I think that we've just seen that very sort of notorious picture of The Economist asking the big question, has Brazil blown it?
No, well, as everybody may know, the macroeconomics in Brazil are really bad. And this is a very interesting situation, because if the macroeconomics are probably in the worst situation in the last 10 years, for the tech space probably is the best moment for the last 10 years. And it's easy to understand that. We just saw Alexandre's explanation. So the internet penetration in Brazil is very big. Brazil are very heavy adopters of technology. So we see all the tech companies growing very fast in Brazil. I can figure that last year we have the Black Friday in Brazil. It's a big event in the retailers. Was a big success. The offline sales went down 4%, and the online sales grew 51%. So we can see a big shift for the online in Brazil. So we see all our portfolio companies growing very steady. And when you have a crisis, people are willing to change behavior, and this is very favorable for tech companies.
But I mean, Atomico has been in Brazil for how long?
For 4 years now.
4 years. So the sort of the circumstances when you decided to go there were totally different, right?
Were totally different. Brazil the crisis was going up, so was a big enthusiasm about Brazil. But what we could say, that the reality is that the crisis never took off, so it never came down. It was never as good as people thought, and I don't think it's as bad as everybody thought. The fundamentals of the economy are still very good. We still have full employment in Brazil. So, and now the devaluation of the company makes the valuation of the investments more attractive. Of course, there's bad things about the crisis. The volatility of the currency is not good, so, but overall, probably is the best time for tech in Brazil.
So Gabriela, I mean, you're in Argentina, right? So you're based in Buenos Aires. You see talent, going everywhere, different places, and a lot of the attention has been sort of placed in Brazil the last couple of years. How do you feel this is going to affect the reality in the next probably 3-4 years?
Yes, talent is.
Here.
Is it working?
You can use mine.
Talent is. It's a big issue all across the region. The maturity of the different ecosystems in the different countries actually has changed a lot, and it has evolved. My particular history was starting in '97 as an entrepreneur, to going into investment, into acquiring companies, and then into venture capital, always in technology. And as you see the evolution, really, you do have in Argentina particularly, where the economy and the macroeconomic conditions are completely chaotic, and you can certainly count on a crisis every 10 years or so. And really, the way people behave is we've created generation after generation now knowing that people need to forge their own futures, and those futures have to be cross-border. So I think that's one of the main aspects of the entrepreneurial culture you see in Argentina. There's a lot of entrepreneurship by necessity, but that doesn't necessarily get you the best quality of people. But coupled with good level of education in general, which is something that has to continue evolving, it's becoming more and more relevant. So you see a lot of companies emerging from Argentina, where their development structures are there and the entrepreneurs cross-border. But in the last couple of years, what I've seen is Brazil talent has gone a long way. And you see a lot better talent, and there's actually people from the States moving to Brazil to found companies because they see the opportunity in the market, because they see the inefficiencies, so the technology can bridge those inefficiencies and can actually make a big difference. Investment structures are a different issue, and they might have to be adjusted because what works in other parts of the world necessarily won't work there. But you see an evolution in talent. The same happens in Colombia. Colombia is also evolving, is getting better entrepreneurs, is getting well-educated people taking the risk of becoming an entrepreneur. And I'll let Mexico for Paul here.
Say it.
Whereas, other ecosystems have been struggling more to actually generate that pool of talent, which I think continues to be the distinctive factor of Argentina in the region.
Paul, thank you for that. Paul, before we dive into the fabulous Mexico, which we know well, and you know particularly well, I mean, you've seen different stories of different countries going up and down. What should we do with Brazil right now?
So I share Haroldo's opinion. I just got back from a week in Brazil and Rio and São Paulo, and Andy was there with me, and we spoke at we participated in the Super Returns Conference. We were in the venture session for LatAm, the Super Returns Conference, and there were more panelists speaking than people in the audience. And the conference was the worst attended. So the investor sentiment on Brazil has just tanked. And there are not a lot of people showing up looking for opportunities. For me, I'm the kid that loves that big pile of manure because I know there's a horse in there somewhere. And so I look at when everybody's walking away, man, that might be the time to enter. Especially in the venture market, I think we invest when prices are low, when we sell when it's high, right? So this probably would be an ideal, because they've been building infrastructure and capability for such a long time. And it might be the ideal time to actually enter, not private equity, but on the venture market, might be a really interesting time. So from our fund, this is an interesting thought that we are generating right now, because we never before considered Brazil because it was such a hot sector and overhyped. So I like what's, I like the capability that they've built out, a lot of great funds in Brazil, and there's a huge amount of opportunity there. So for the first time, when we did our analysis, we started with a global perspective, and everybody was telling us, well, China, India, Brazil. That's obvious. You guys are stupid if you go anyplace else. And so when I moved to Mexico, I was ridiculed. Wall Street Journal article, what in the world is he doing? Gringo springing to Mexico, thinks he's going to create an industry. And my partners in the U.S. freaked out. They said, are you kidding? Drug lords, we're in a financial crisis. It was 2008. Immigration issues, if it's so great, why are they coming across the border? I mean, I had everybody just saying it was so obvious. But for me, I'm like, no, it's the time, because the market's going to be humble enough for the ecosystem to come together and work with each other where we can actually make an impact. And that's exactly what happened. And so I see that now. Actually, Brazil is probably really primed for that.
Do you want anything to add to that, or? So, I mean, you just mentioned that that's sort of what drove you to Mexico. In the period of time you've been looking at Mexico, not only looking at the opportunity that we saw as a country, what do you think has sort of been the basis of what has been accomplished in Mexico and what's building the ecosystem?
I'm not saying we race towards a crisis, otherwise we'd be in Argentina all the time.
Thanks for that.
We'd be living in Argentina. By the way, I'm plugged for Argentina. if you want the best returns in Latin America, you're going to be investing in Argentina. They have the least amount of capital and they have the biggest outcomes. And it's because the Argentinians have figured out how to live inside of a crisis. They've been screwed so many times that they've figured out how to live and adapt to that environment. And because of that, they are world-class innovators and change agents and entrepreneurs. And they also don't think about their local market because it's not a great opportunity. They think globally. So you have these dynamic entrepreneurs that think globally, and you have your billion-dollar exits all coming out of Argentina where there's no capital. And so we've made our third investment. We're taking our fourth investment in Argentina right now, and it's a pretty interesting market. So what was your question on Mexico?
I'm saying, you know, how to go into Mexico with a lot of probably assumptions and things that you thought against what everyone else was thinking. What are sort of the major the learnings you've sort of come across while being there, and what's your impression of what's been happening in Mexico this past few years?
Mexico turned on like the light switch. There's been a pent-up demand from this generation that's coming online, and a lot of this is being driven by this generational transformation or switchover that's happening right now. So you are like a perfect example. It's this generation right now that's sophisticated, educated, and is driving a change. They don't want to run their family's business. They want to change the world. And so we just kind of lucked or played into that trend right now that's happening in Mexico. We had a down market opportunity. Families came together. We had 32 family offices come into our fund, some of the leading technical companies in Mexico, and it was led by the multilaterals, IFC, Inter-American Development Bank. All the countries of Latin America invested into us, and as well as the local Mexican government. So we had a massive collaboration, and you can't get that collaboration unless you're in a crisis. People are huddling together. Otherwise, they're kind of fighting with each other. And when we came into Mexico, we thought, if we're going to pull this off, we're going to have to optimize for trust. So we looked at the different regions of Mexico, and we started with Mexico City, but the Chilangos has a low trust culture. And my mom was born in Chihuahua, by the way. And so when the analysis came back, when we looked at the globe and came back to Mexico, I said, there's no way it's Mexico. There's no way. Redo the data, because I know Mexico. And when we came back and looked at it, all the demographic trends, the opportunities, the 10-year forecast, we did over 100 face-to-face meetings in the country. We did massive research. You can go online and see the internal analysis that we've shared with the world. And when we came back and said it was Mexico, we said, okay, we're going to have to optimize for trust. And we decided to launch it in the Northeast in Monterrey. It's a very crisp business culture. It's more American than it is Mexican. And it has a very high trust within that environment. And that's what launched it. It was this nucleus of these families that came together that decided to do this. And then fast forward to today, there's 37 venture funds in the country right now. So it's shocking as to we went from 0 to 37. What's happening in the country. The government's got behind it, and that the country just literally turned on over within the last 4 years.
Haroldo, you were mentioning that you guys are sort of looking at Mexico as well?
Yes, we are mainly focused in Brazil, but we start to look across Latin America, and we see that penetration is growing everywhere, and macroeconomics are getting better everywhere. So, as Mexico being the second largest market in Latin America, makes all the sense for us to invest. We've covered a little bit about Brazil. We know already what's happening in Mexico. What's hot? I mean, what's the thing that no one's talking about that we should still look at in the region?
I think the biggest unnoticed thing is the Pacific Alliance that's happening. So the PAC, Pacific Alliance, Mexico, Chile, Colombia, Peru. They've formed a trading bloc. And this thing is, the economy is equal to Brazil. It's the fastest growing countries in the world. Stable, high growth. Governments are relatively sophisticated. Well, very sophisticated, and they're down on corruption for the most part. You go to the current president of Peru the previous president of Peru is in jail right now, so you just never see that. And so they're really going after corruption. And so this trading bloc is pretty exciting.
I think when we talk about LatAm, we have to understand that they're very heterogeneous countries, so the opportunities will be different in which one of the countries. Brazil and Mexico are large markets, so they will have opportunities that may be specific for those markets and don't have to grow to other regions. But what I think we start to see more in Latin America, in Brazil specific, in the beginning were copycats or geographic innovation, like some people like to say. And now we start to see real innovation companies that are going abroad, and we'll start to see like great companies coming out of Latin America that are not only focused on those markets, but are focused on global market.
Gabriela, so we've seen we've sort of in the last couple of years we haven't really seen a lot of very special flashy exits, right? At least in the region. So do you think there's anything we can be doing? Is there maybe you perceive a move maybe on corporate venture that might help M&A? I mean, what's your take on this?
I also represent the Daily Mail and General Trust in Latin America, so that would be corporate venturing. What I see is that Latin America really does have a constant flow of smaller exits. What we, I think, need to understand is that unless we continue to build the momentum through these trade sales or corporate exits, if you want to call them that way, we won't be generating a critical mass of people that can build the next bigger thing. Because although, yes, there is 35 funds now in Mexico, some are quite new, and there's a few funds in Brazil, quite a few funds in Brazil, sorry. The reality is that in the region in general, there's not that many funds, and it's difficult for the funds to find the returns that would be attractive for their LPs. So it's difficult because you have a lot of sort of first-time fund managers and first-time LPs also to get into the next stage. So what I think is that the size of, we need to make amends with the size of the exits Latin America has, and consider that that will have a spillover effect over the whole ecosystem, enabling entrepreneurs to generate more businesses and therefore start building up the exits to something that is more interesting. Today, you find a lot of entrepreneurs get strangled relatively quickly in their growth process, and there's a scarcity of capital for a Series B or a Series C in some companies, and I've heard that a lot in Brazil. And if we don't understand that difference, and that takes time to build the momentum, really exits in Latin America have a range from like 6-7 million to maybe 30 million at the most. And there's a whole range of movement down there, but that's not attractive enough for larger funds. And that is a problem. So we either understand how fund structures work, and we adapt them to make sure LPs get an interesting return to continue trusting and reinvesting into a building ecosystem, or we're going to frustrate a lot of people and there are going to be a lot of single-time funds.
I have a little bit of a different view on that.
Well, you have to, right? No. Probably, Paul, you too.
We did have some exits in Brazil. If you looked at, we started to invest 4 years ago, and you need some time for companies to grow and to get to a maturity. So we'll see a lot of exits in Brazil, but most of the funds arrived like 3-4 years ago in Brazil, 5 years ago. So you need some time to like get billion-dollar companies. We had a lot of exits in Brazil from previous investments. We had Mercado Livre from Argentina, Cato in Brazil, we have Saks, we have many exits in Brazil, but most of the people that started to invest, they started to invest 4 years ago. Most of the companies were copycats, were small companies that were not targeting to be billion-dollar companies. They were targeted to be acquired by global strategics, and many of them were sold. We have one of our portfolio companies that were sold. So we do have some exits in Brazil, and the big exits will come. We still need some more time, but for sure they will come.
We had 5 exits. We had 5 exits last year, and they're all in the zone that she was talking about between our two funds.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, I don't disagree that eventually it can build up, but we're not at that stage. And if we don't really make amends with that, we're going to struggle. We cannot keep on living off the story of Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre was over 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and it's great. And it's a great company, but it's a unicorn.
No, but you had an IPO this last year on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yes, Globant, again, Argentina.
Okay. Right.
But that's
you had Saks that were sold to Sephora. You have Cato that Tiger sold.
Yeah,
you have a lot of
the
companies.
exits. I mean, and if you want the billion-dollar companies, they've been.
As well.
So it's kind of ironic that Argentina is saying there have been small exits where you've had the only billion-dollar unicorns in Latin America.
I was talking with
yes, we did, but we can count them. Okay, let's count them with this hand and see how many fingers are left.
But 5 is pretty good compared to 0.
But
it's good,
I was
but
spoken with.
Build up the whole ecosystem. That's what I'm saying.
I was spoken with Fabio, the manager of Intel Capital in Brazil.
I see some fans over there.
And he said, well, I don't know why people say they don't have exit. I had 10 exits in my fund. Were small exits because the amount of money invested were small. So
I think it's a point to Gabriela's argument.
No, but there is exit.
You just made her argument.
So, one last question before we get kicked out. Miami, do we really have to care?
No.
Okay, Gabriela.
I think we actually do, and I'll tell you why.
Tell me.
This is the business development hub for the region. We won't necessarily find investment or entrepreneurs find investment here, but this is where businesses will grow and become exciting so they can get the big exits.
Haroldo, your take?
No, I agree. We always say that Miami is the capital of Latin America. So
You're clapping on your points, Gabriela.
So it's definitely, it's always been a hub for Latin America. And I believe most of the population in Miami here is connected with Latin America. So
I think once Miami gets its entrepreneur ecosystem cranking, I think it'll be super relevant. But I think it's going to have to get its act together and build its high trust environment in order to do that. And I think it'll be a force to be reckoned with. But right now, I haven't seen anything come out of Miami really. Just a couple of deals, and there's just not. It's rifle shots. It's not an ecosystem.
Are you guys ready to invest here if you see something that you like? I mean, you just mentioned you might be looking at Mexico now. Is Miami something that would interest you?
I'm thinking about buying an apartment here.
My point.
Probably totally different reasons.
Me too.
No, well, in Atomico, we believe that great companies can come from everywhere. I wouldn't say why not in Miami. You have everything you need to build a great company here. And I'm sure we'll
Well, would you say there's enough capital destined
there's capital, there's talent, there is the infrastructure needed, and I won't see why people will not build great companies in Miami.
Well, what's your main concern about Miami?
Well, we're looking for markets, right? We're markets first. We're markets second, markets third. And then we have the management team, and then in technology, oh yeah, it has to be there. And so what does Miami have to offer? Money, but it's not a market. It doesn't have the depth of management team, and it hasn't had the historical of innovation. So innovation capacity, entrepreneurship activity, and investment capacity. It has investment, but the other two, it could be a support for Latin America. It could be a partner for Latin America, but in itself, it's not a market. So I don't kind of get the argument.
What I see that, and I agree with Paul that you don't see that many entrepreneurs or company emerging out of Miami, but what you do see is that there's still a lot of companies to do business within the region that are based in Miami. So they can be a gateway and in the business development sense. They're working on the rest of the aspect that Paul just mentioned, but I think that's the point for me to rescue of Miami. And it's a friendlier environment for entrepreneurs to get into the US than landing sometimes in Silicon Valley, where it's very aggressive, everybody fighting for capital. They're very far away from Latin America. They don't understand the culture. So there's certain things that might be good, but certainly a lot of work has to be done.
If I were Mammy, I would bear hug Latin America rather than try to build your own thing here. Because Latin America would welcome you in open arms and say, oh, you're part of us, you are. Everybody speaks Spanish here, everybody. They assume I speak Spanish in the elevators. And so it's Latin America, but don't be an island.
You look very Latin.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, ¿estás hablando en español conmigo? Sí, por favor, ¿por qué? Why are you talking Spanish to me? Do I look like a...
I think I look like a gringo. Okay, thank you so much. I think we ran out of time, so we're off to the next panel, but thank you so much.
Thank you.